Imagine you're driving down this uh, really winding, treacherous mountain road. Out of nowhere, this thick pea soup fog rolls in.
Right, the kind where you literally can't see the hood of your own car.
Exactly. The kind where you can barely see 5 feet ahead. You're creeping along, your heart is just pounding, and your hands have this death grip on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Every shadow looks like a hazard. And then, out of nowhere, you slam on the brakes because a massive fallen pine tree is just sitting there completely blocking your lane. Your bumper stops like an inch from the bark.
Oh, man. And see, from your perspective, sitting inside that driver's seat, hitting the brakes at that exact terrifying split second was, well, it was the only logical choice available to you.
Right.
You reacted as quickly as humanly possible, given what you could actually see through the windshield in that fog.
But now let's let's change the perspective for a second. Imagine there's someone flying a drone high up above that mountain, way where the sky is perfectly clear and sunny.
Okay.
They're watching your car inch along from above, and they're looking at their crisp 4K screen, and they're just thinking, why on earth did they wait so long to brake? I mean, that tree has been sitting there blocking the road for 20 minutes.
They're probably thinking you're texting or just a terrible driver.
Exactly. Are they not paying attention? But they have no idea about the fog.
And that right there is the ultimate disconnect in how human beings judge failure. The observer with the drone, they see the entire picture, and crucially, they already know the outcome before it happens.
Yeah, they know about the tree.
Right. Because they possess all that perfect, clear sky information, they just immediately judge the driver's actions as careless or slow. They aren't factoring in the fog because, well, they aren't experiencing it.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are exploring that exact disconnect, but we are taking it out of the car and into situations where the stakes are literally a matter of life and death, and where the fog is the immense pressure of a high-risk job.
It's a really fascinating translation of that concept.
It really is. Our mission today is to figure out how to build an environment where learning from failure isn't just, some empty corporate buzzword slapped on a break room poster. We want to show you how to shift your team's default reaction from pointing fingers to genuinely understanding why things go wrong.
And the material we're pulling from today is fantastic for this.
Yeah, we are pulling all of this from an incredibly insightful source document. It's called Just Culture in Practice, a practical guide for small organizations in high-risk domains. And that's by Gareth Locke.
What makes this specific guide so vital, I think, is the target audience. It's written explicitly for small, high-stakes teams. So we're talking about commercial diving operations, mountain rescue teams, adventure sports crews.
Small field engineering firms, things like that.
Exactly. Unpredictable environments where a single mistake can be catastrophic. And yet they completely lack the massive HR departments, the anonymous safety reporting databases, or even the legal shields that exist in, say, commercial aviation or big corporate healthcare.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can fix a broken culture,
Yeah.
we really have to understand why our human brains naturally default to the worst possible reaction when something goes sideways.
Which is blame.
Always blame. An accident happens, and we instantly look for a culprit. We want a name.
Let's ground this in a real-world scenario from the industries the guide covers. Imagine a commercial diver, 100 feet underwater, doing a complex pipeline repair.
High stress, low visibility.
Extremely. They turn the wrong valve, the pressure drops, and it causes a massive, life-threatening emergency. Why is our immediate reflex to just say, fire that diver?
Well, it all comes back to that fog analogy, which the guide frames as a core concept called local rationality.
What are your rationality?
Yeah, it's this fundamental idea that a person's actions almost always made sense to them at the specific time they took them. That diver was acting rationally based on what they knew in that exact moment.
Factoring in things like timeline pressure from the surface. Oh, absolutely. The timeline pressure, what their equipment made easy or difficult to do in the dark. The safety researcher, Sidney Decker, actually describes this as the operator being inside a tunnel. Inside the tunnel, you only see what is directly in front of you.
And crucially, you don't know the outcome yet.
Right. You don't know it's going to end in an emergency.
But when the accident happens and the formal review begins back on dry land, the people conducting the review are standing entirely outside the tunnel.
They're the drone operator, and that introduces the psychological trap of hindsight bias. Cognitive psychology is incredibly consistent on this point. Once human beings know the outcome of a complex chain of events, our brains play a massive trick on us.
We think we would have seen it coming.
Always. We reliably remember that chain as being far more obvious, more linear, and way more preventable than it actually was in the chaotic reality of the moment. We just strip away all the distracting noise that the diver was experiencing. Yeah, when you know the bad outcome, it's so incredibly easy to work backward, find the exact moment the diver touched the wrong valve, and just loudly declare that the root cause.
The text actually makes a really powerful point about this trap. It says that blame fundamentally mistakes proximity for responsibility.
I love that phrase. Treating the person who happens to be physically or temporally closest to the error.
Like the last one to touch the valve.
Exactly. We're the last one to sign the papal form. Treating them as the ultimate cause is an existential threat to an organization.
How so?
Well, the practical consequence of a blaming culture is that it immediately shuts down the exact flow of information the organization needs to survive. When people anticipate that management will respond with blame, they go right into self-protection mode.
Which means they start hiding things.
Oh, totally. They edit their incident accounts, they stay completely silent about the near misses, the fault engages, all the daily workarounds that would otherwise serve as early warning signs.
So the dangerous conditions that cause the accident just stay there, right? Like they're just hiding in the dark, waiting for the very next diver to stumble into them.
Exactly. The guide lays it out so plainly. It says blame and organizational learning are in direct zero-sum conflict. You get to choose exactly one. You cannot have both.
That is heavy, but it makes so much sense. So how do organizations actually build a foundation to resist that natural urge to blame, especially in the small teams this guide is written for? Because, I mean, in a sprawling multinational corporation, the incident investigator, the disciplinary panel, and your union rep are all entirely different people.
Right, they're in totally different departments, probably different buildings.
But in a small diving business, the investigator, the boss, the HR department, and your friend might literally be the exact same person sitting across from you in a tiny, portable office.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the guide is absolutely adamant that those two processes have to be entirely separated. They cannot, under any circumstances, happen in the same meeting.
Learning and discipline, you mean?
Yes. A learning review asks, what happened and how did it make sense to you in the moment? But a disciplinary process asks, did this person act in a way that is genuinely unacceptable?
And if you mix those up,
If a small business owner runs those conversations together, which is the default habit for most managers, honestly, employees simply will not share the messy context, honestly.
because anything the diver says in the spirit of learning could be used as evidence to fire them 5 minutes later in the same conversation.
Precisely. You'd be handing them the ammunition to shoot you with. The text also talks about the absolute killer of reporting, which it calls the black hole.
Oh, the black hole. Tell me about this.
Well, the biggest enemy of workplace safety isn't actually malice or intentional rule breaking, it's the black hole. This is the phenomenon where people actually take the interpersonal risk to report a near miss or point out a broken procedure, and they hear absolutely nothing back.
It just vanishes into the void.
The report goes into a void, and total silence comes out. And people don't stop reporting safety issues because they stop caring. They stop reporting because they can't see any tangible evidence that their effort makes a difference.
Right. Why bother sticking your neck out?
Exactly. Closing that communication loop, even just walking over and saying, hey, thanks for the report. Here's exactly why we don't have the budget to fix that gauge right now. Doing that changes the culture instantly.
Which brings us to a concept that acts as the bedrock for all of this, and it's psychological safety.
Oh, yes.
It's become a massive corporate buzzword lately, but I love how the source text clarifies what it actually means in practice, because it is not about feeling comfortable.
Far from it. Psychological safety is the shared belief among a team that the environment is safe for interpersonal risk-taking.
Taking a risk with your peers.
Yes, it's the concrete belief that if you tell the unvarnished truth about a mistake you made, a concern you have, or maybe an unpopular observation about a senior leader's plan, you will not be punished, ridiculed, or socially excluded from the group.
The data on this in the text is wild. It points out that psychologically safe teams actually report far more errors, but physically make fewer of them.
Yeah, let's look at the underlying mechanism behind that statistic because it is fascinating. Why do they make fewer physical errors? First, because they feel safe, they speak up about what is going wrong long before it snowballs into a catastrophic incident.
They don't wait for the explosion.
Right. They catch what safety experts call drifting conditions. This is the normalization of deviance. The slow, creeping habit of accepting small risks, like skipping a radio check because the radios are always staticky.
Until that shortcut just becomes the dangerous new normal.
Exactly. Psychologically safe teams catch that drift early.
It also seems like there's a massive cognitive load factor here, right? Like, if you are terrified of being fired for every small mistake, your brain is dedicating a huge amount of processing power to fear and covering your tracks. You're just distracted.
Precisely. Fear hijacks working memory. If your mental energy is consumed by anxiety about your boss's reaction, you literally have less brain power available to focus on the technical task of turning the correct underwater valve.
So the fear of making a mistake actually causes more physical mistakes.
It creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, and leaders hold immense power here. A supervisor can destroy months of psychological safety in 1 second with a sarcastic comment during a debriefing.
Oh, for sure.
Alternatively, they can build it by asking genuine, open-ended questions and visibly acting on the concerns the team raises.
I have to admit, I'm struggling with this. I really am. So what does this all mean? If someone on my team makes a careless, stupid mistake that gets someone hurt, my gut emotional reaction is that they need to be blamed.
That's a very human reaction.
Right. If we emphasize psychological safety, and we're always looking at system factors, and we constantly say everyone's actions made sense to them at the time, aren't we just creating a no-blame free-for-all? Doesn't blaming the system just give reckless people a free pass to do whatever they want?
That is the single most common and arguably the most dangerous misconception about this entire framework. A just culture is not a no-blame culture.
Okay, thank goodness.
Yeah, no blame is neither fair nor honest nor safe for anyone involved. A just culture actually demands a much higher, far more rigorous form of accountability. It just fundamentally changes the type of accountability we use. We have to look at the crucial difference between retributive accountability and restorative accountability.
Retributive, like retribution, seeking payback.
Yes. Retributive accountability is entirely backward-looking. It asks 3 rigid questions. What specific rule was broken? Who broke it? And what should the punishment be?
That sounds like every disciplinary meeting ever.
Right, and it creates a deeply threatening environment. Paris's research from 2025, which is heavily cited in the guide, notes that these traditional hierarchical forms of accountability actually inhibit learning.
Because everyone gets defensive.
Exactly. When faced with punishment, people instinctively deploy defensive justifications. They spend their energy arguing why they shouldn't be punished, rather than analyzing what actually failed.
So how does restorative accountability fix that defensive posture?
Well, restorative accountability is forward-looking. Instead of hunting for a culprit, it asks, who was harmed by what happened? What do those affected people need in order to recover their trust and confidence? And whose responsibility is it to fix the systemic issues to meet those needs?
That's a huge shift.
It is. It shifts the organizational focus from who do we punish to what needs to change. It relies heavily on what Paris calls socializing accountability. These are informal, peer-to-peer conversations based on mutual respect and professional competence, rather than a hierarchical boss interrogating an anxious employee.
But the guide does add a really crucial caveat to this, which I think addresses my earlier worry. The line between what is an acceptable, honest error and what is genuinely unacceptable, reckless behavior needs to be defined explicitly before an incident happens.
Yes. You cannot draw that line during the emotional, chaotic fallout of an accident.
Because everyone is just angry and scared.
If you haven't sat down as a team during a calm period to discuss what constitutes genuinely reckless behavior, assumptions will diverge wildly the moment the pressure is on. The boss might view skipping a safety check as a fireable offense, while the crew might view it as the only way to meet the boss's unrealistic deadlines.
Wow, yeah. Okay, so we've laid the philosophical foundation. We know we want restorative accountability. But how do we actually execute that when things go terribly wrong?
We need a tool.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting. The guide provides a brilliantly practical blueprint. It's an 8-question review, adapted from a safety model originally used at BP by Batar and his colleagues. And what strikes me about this tool is the sequence. It forces you to look at the environment and the system first, and individual intent absolutely last.
That specific sequence is the magic of the tool. In older safety models, individual intent was often the very first question asked.
Like, what were you thinking?
Exactly. And that immediately primed reviewers to hunt for blame before they understood a single thing about the context. This revised 8-question model actively delays that human urge to judge. Let's apply this to our hypothetical diver who turned the wrong valve and caused the emergency.
Okay, let's walk through the progression. You sit down with the diver, having already established that psychological safety so they aren't defensive, and you don't start by asking what they did wrong. You start with question 1. Was the person instructed or influenced to act this way by someone with authority over them?
Like, did the dive supervisor on the surface implicitly say, I know the gauge is wonky, just guess, we need this done by 5 p.m.?
Right. And if the answer to question 1 is yes,
Then the investigation shifts focus. You stop looking exclusively at the diver. The supervisor's actions and the pressure they applied now require review.
but if the answer is no, you move to question 2. Were the expectations and procedures actually clear and workable? This highlights a concept that comes up a lot in the text, the gap between work as imagined and work as done.
Yeah.
Work as imagined is the pristine, perfect procedure manual written by management in a cozy, dry office. Work as done is the messy, practical reality of a diver trying to follow that manual in freezing, murky water while their hands are numb.
If the procedure requires reading a gauge that is physically impossible to see in those conditions, the procedure isn't workable. That's exactly what you were looking for, gaps in the fundamental design of the work.
So then you move on. Question 3 looks at confidence and resources. Did the diver actually have the proper training, tools, and backup?
And question 4 looks at air-producing conditions. Were they suffering from extreme time pressure, exhaustion from a double shift? Was the valve rusted?
Basically, did they intend to do the right thing but make an honest physical mistake because the conditions were terrible?
Right.
Then we hit question 5, which focuses on custom and practice. Was everyone on the dive team taking this exact same shortcut?
This is critical. If the behavior was widespread, like if ignoring that specific faulty gauge is a recognized, unspoken workaround across the entire crew, then responding by punishing one individual diver is entirely useless.
You're just playing whack-a-mole.
Exactly. You don't have a bad apple. You have a systemic cultural norm. You have to address the team practice, not the unlucky person who happened to get caught by its consequences today.
I really love question 6. It's called the substitution test. Would another typical person with the same knowledge, experience, and skill have likely done the exact same thing in that exact same situation?
This is the ultimate defining test of local rationality. It's not asking what a perfect, robotic employee would do with the benefit of hindsight.
Right, not the drone operator.
No, it's asking what a typical, reasonable peer would do under the same crushing fatigue with the same murky water and the same fog. If the answer is yes, most peers would probably turn the same wrong valve, then it is the situation that is producing the behavior, not a character flaw in the diver.
And it is only after you have cleared all 6 of those systemic hurdles that you finally arrive at questions 7 and 8. Those ask, is there specific, undeniable evidence that the person acted for personal gain, with a blatant disregard for a known and understood risk, or with malicious intent to cause harm?
And the statistical data surrounding this progression is just staggering. The research by Batar found that in practical application, roughly 90% of all incident cases are fully resolved at the system level.
90%.
Meaning, questions 1 through 6 completely explain why the event happened. Genuine individual culpability, where an employee intentionally and maliciously violates a perfectly workable rule without any system pressure, is the extreme exception. It is incredibly rare.
Think about your own workplace for a second, right? If your management's default reaction to a failure is to immediately look for a bad apple to fire, 9 times out of 10, they are literally blinding themselves to the broken system that actually caused the problem. They are firing the symptom and keeping the disease.
That's a great way to put it. But completing those 8 questions isn't the end of the just culture process. It's really the beginning of a completely different type of conversation.
Because an investigation is utterly useless if the findings just live in a spreadsheet on a manager's hard drive.
Exactly. This raises an important question. How do we turn these systemic insights into daily habits that actually prevent the next disaster?
And that transition starts right there in the room with how you talk to the person who made the error after the 8-question review is finished.
The follow-up conversation must be intentionally restorative. You are not a judge delivering a verdict from on high. You are sharing the complete picture of the system factors that the review revealed.
Showing them they aren't crazy.
Yes. The guide specifically references the vital work of Dr. Laura Walton within the diving community here. You share the broader context, you check your understanding against their lived experience, and then you ask what they need to recover.
That recovery piece is so important because the guide points out that the person involved in the accident is almost always far harder on themselves than any formal review would ever be. They are carrying massive, crushing guilt.
They are what the safety literature refers to as the second victim, or the second person closest to the event. The first victims are those physically harmed, but the second victim is the operator carrying the emotional trauma of having caused the harm.
So how does a restorative conversation help them?
It's an opportunity to restore their fractured sense of professional competence. Simply asking, what do you need from us in order to feel confident going back out on the dive boat tomorrow, is a profound, incredibly effective safety intervention.
It's amazing how remarkably simple language tweaks can rewrite an entire team's DNA. Instead of a boss storming in and asking what went wrong and who did it, they can take a breath and ask, what happened? And what systemic factors made it easy or hard for you to do the right thing today?
Yes, it shifts the whole defensive energy of the room into collaborative problem solving. And once you gather that collaborative context, you must take tangible action.
Right, it can't just be talk.
Every single finding from the 8-question review must have a specific action attached to it, a named owner responsible for it, and a strict time frame for completion. But we also have to remain humble about those actions.
What do you mean by humble?
Well, the guide astutely notes that any change we make to a procedure is just a hypothesis for improvement. We think buying a new type of gauge will help, but it might actually introduce a new, unforeseen complication. We don't actually learn anything until the change is implemented in the real world and its effect is carefully measured.
The guide also outlines some really lightweight, practical habits to make this culture stick, which I love. You don't need a massive software platform. It can be as simple as a 5-minute debrief at the end of every single shift.
Just 3 questions.
Exactly. What went well today? What surprised us? What do we need to improve for tomorrow? That's it.
But small teams must be extremely careful to protect this fragile culture from leadership change. This is a major vulnerability.
Oh, if the good boss leaves.
Right. If your entire just culture framework exists solely in the head of one progressive business owner or one empathetic lead instructor, the moment that person retires or leaves for another job, the culture instantly reverts to blame.
It all washes away.
To achieve true structural resilience, the framework has to be written down in policy, embedded deeply into new hire inductions, and actively practiced by multiple leaders. Trust is earned through consistent daily behavior, not promised by a theoretical document.
So bringing this all back to you listening right now, why does this matter if you never plan on putting on a wetsuit or climbing a mountain? Because whether you're managing a small tech startup, leading a neighborhood community project, or honestly, just trying to navigate the messy dynamics of your own family, applying this core principle of local rationality can completely transform how you view the human beings around you.
It really is a universal concept.
It is. When you start with a generous assumption that people's actions made sense to them at the time, given the fog they were in, you stop hunting for culprits. You start hunting for context. You step out of the drone operator's judgment seat, and you start trying to understand the system.
I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over, building on that concept of the second victim, the person carrying the heavy weight of the mistake.
Yeah.
Imagine a society where your absolute worst professional mistake isn't immediately viewed as a permanent, shameful stain on your moral character, but is instead simply viewed as a valuable stress test of the system around you. Think about how much mental and emotional energy we all waste every single day hiding our flaws, covering up our near misses, and frantically defending ourselves from blame.
So much energy.
What if all that exact same energy could be redirected? What if we used it to redesign the world to be safer, fairer, and a lot more understanding for everyone?
If we can just stop yelling at each other about why we hit the brakes and start looking closely at the fog, we might finally clear the road ahead.